Great. Thank you so much, Kennedy. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you on this funding call. Obviously, today we're going to cover, a very high level myriad of topics that have to do with funding your franchise opportunity. As Kennedy said, just don't feel bad about interrupting if you have questions or clarifying questions. If there's something that I feel like we need to go into more detail about that would take more time than it would be that we have today, I'll happily go ahead and have a one-on-one conversation with you. My contact information will be in the last slide, and it is the QR code, so you're able to scan it. Plus, Kennedy will share all that information for you as well. Okay. So as far as Benetrends Financial is, we are a funding company that we've been around for 40 years. Originally, our original funding strategy was the ROBS, which is Rollover for Business Startups, and I'll dig into the history of Benetrends to kind of explain that a little bit more shortly. But just know that we have been in the industry for over 40 years. We're actually the only preferred lender for the International Franchise Association in the 50-year history of the IFA. So we are definitely well-versed in all things funding, not just franchises, but business opportunities, funding solutions. We do a complimentary consultation that is free to you to find out if you're going to look into a loan possibility, the loan that you'd most likely be qualified for. Super simple process. So if you haven't already engaged with us and have interest in doing so, happy to help out there. First, we're going to start out with the SBA loan. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not. So I'm going to just deep dive into maybe 6 or 7 things that are important to note about it. The Small Business Association, SBA loans, probably you're familiar with. It's the most common solution for when you're looking to fund a business. SBAs are not loans from the government. They're loans that are government backed, and that backing applies to the lender. So it just gives banks more of an appetite to loan to small businesses. It's the most common way to go ahead and fund a startup business. As far as the things to note about SBA loans, there's about 4 or 5 things. So the first thing is terms. So as far as terms are, the terms for SBA loans are 10 years. And within those terms, there's no prepayment penalties. You can pay them as quickly as you want to. The other few things to note is that they do require what's called an equity injection into the business. So 20% is typically the highest amount of equity injection that we would see. Sometimes we're seeing lately more 16%, so between 16 and 30%. And an equity injection is not a payment to the bank. So some people get confused with equity injection and think down payment, but essentially it is an injection into the business itself. So for example, franchise fees, things like that sometimes tend to work into that equity injection. But when you're looking at the total project cost for the loan, you're going to want to think 20% of that is going to need to be the equity injection for the business. 700 credit score or higher is what they're going to be looking for. If you own a business, they will be looking, if you own a business, not the one you're looking at first thing now, they're going to want to look into that. If you're looking at a resale, the interest rate will go, or the injection will go down to 10%, and they're going to want to look into the health of that business. So a little bit different for purchasing already existing franchises, but in this scenario, you're going to be looking at that 20% for a new franchise, and that injection typically ends up being a portion of the franchise fees. The other thing to note about SBA loans is that there is also a 20% post-closing liquid, or what sometimes we often refer to as post or global debt service. And what that means is when it comes to SBA loans, they are going to want to make sure that you're not using every dollar that you have in order to fund this business. So the 20% post-closing could be in liquid, cash, investments. It can also be your income if you're keeping your current position with a company that you're at. So you just want to make sure that those 2 things you're aware of. Liquidity is very important when it comes to these processes. So obviously we do a free pre-qualification, so we can make sure that you have the necessary liquid injection, post-closing liquidity, credit score, things like that. The last part that you want to know about SBA loans is the interest rate. So interest rates for SBA loans are not fixed. So they're always going to be a function of prime plus 2.75%. Prime is a fluctuating number, and it's set by the Fed, as I mentioned earlier. Currently prime is 8.5%. So that makes SBA loans right around 11.25%. However, yesterday the Fed did come out and say that they are looking at a freeze of the interest rate and then at least 6-point changes down over the next 6 months. So that is good news. Of course, there's no guarantee there, but that is what they came out and said yesterday. So keep that in the back of your mind. When it comes to your percentage, or excuse me, for your payments to the SBA loans, you're going to see if there's any fluctuation in that interest rate, you'll see a change in your payment scheduling quarterly. So for example, if you receive your SBA loan in March and then you see that there is a couple fluctuations in the interest rate down, you won't see that new change in your payment until that following quarter. Moving on from, did anybody have any questions? I don't see the chat. I guess I can look at it. But if anybody has questions about SBA loans, please feel free to enter in the chat. Otherwise, I will move on to the Fleet program. So the Fleet program is something that is specific to Benetrends. It is a non-SBA program, does not report on your credit. There's no personal collateral required, and it is much lower interest rate. However, the interest rates are fixed. Typically, I see them coming in between 6 and 9%. But the difference between the SBA program and the Fleet program is that with the Fleet program, this is only going to encompass on your item 7 the equipment package and the vehicle package. So if you're looking at something with more of a hefty equipment or equipment package or vehicle package like the iPhones, things like that, this is a great program there. It does not encompass the franchise fee, and it does not encompass any working capital or fees of that nature, but it does take a large chunk, depending on the brand that you're looking at, out of with a much lower interest rate. The other nice thing about our Fleet program is if you're looking at multiple territories or any of the brands that would be a good fit for the Fleet program, you can come back to us within 3 to 6 months of being cash flow positive and go ahead and receive another equipment package and vehicle package without having to go through the pre-approval process again. Self-funding. Obviously, when it comes to self-funding your business, sometimes when people look at funding a business, they automatically go to their bank account and they just see, okay, can I afford to buy this business? As you're probably aware, just speaking on the Fleet and SBA, you don't need to have the entire amount to go ahead and fund the business. However, sometimes if the opportunity presents itself, you may want to use some or all of some cash, or possibly in the scenario, some rollover funds. Rollover for business startups is the ROBS program, is what the IRS calls it. We call it the Rainmaker plan, for obvious reasons, because I get a kick out of that. Some situations you can use these assets and they can use tax deferred, penalty free for business processes. And to be honest with you, this is exactly how Benetrends was founded 40 years ago. So essentially, if you're looking at the rollover for business startups, if you were to just go ahead, if you have a retirement plan with a previous employer, if you have retirement plan funds that you've rolled some previous employer funds into, if you have a traditional IRA, these are all funds that can be used for this process. But if you wanted to just go ahead and let's say you have $200,000 sitting in a retirement plan, if you were to take the early withdrawal and just take that money out, you're going to typically pay about a 10% early withdrawal fee, and then you're going to pay about 30% in taxes. That leaves you, as the slide shows here, with only 120 of that 200,000. With the rollover, the rollover business startups, or what we call Rainmaker, you could use those retirement funds and have access to the entire amount. And the way that this works, essentially, I'll just give you a little bit of background on Benetrends. So as I mentioned, our company was founded 4 years ago, and the founder of our company's name is Lenny Fisher, and he's an ERISA attorney that was looking to purchase a Mako franchise. And that was 4 years ago. And so as he was looking, just the way that all of you are, to find the most economical and efficient way possible to fund his business, he stumbled on the fact that he had noticed that large corporations were using the ROBS program to fund their own companies, but he realized that small business owners could too, which is why he's known as the godfather of the rollover funding strategy, and actually essentially created a business around providing the service. So essentially, I guess the easiest way for me to explain this is, let's just say that I'll just go back to the slide really quickly. Let's say that I'll use companies that are familiar to you guys. So let's say that you work for Apple and you have an Apple 401k, and then tomorrow you get an amazing job opportunity from Microsoft. So you decide to leave Apple and go ahead and take the job at Microsoft. When you do so, you can do one of two things with your Apple retirement plan. You can roll it over into the new plan at Microsoft, or you could roll it over into a traditional IRA, let's say. In either of those scenarios, when you're rolling your funds, I got a chat question. When you're rolling your funds from one qualified, is there a minimum amount? So thank you for asking that question. We do not have a minimum required rollover amount. However, I always typically tell people, you want it to make sense. So around $50,000 is what I usually recommend as the minimum. To roll over for rollover funds. So thanks for that question. And please, guys, if you have any other ones, I'll keep an eye on the chat. So back to the Apple to Microsoft scenario. When you roll your funds from one qualified plan to another, you pay no fees, taxes, or penalties because you're rolling your funds from one qualified plan to another. That's the first thing that our founder realized. The second part, and possibly even the more important component to this, when you have retirement plan funds, you probably are aware that they're mostly set up in the same way. The opportunity to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, but oftentimes there's an opportunity to invest in a company you're working for itself. So let's go back to that Apple scenario. So you work at Apple, you have, let's say, $200,000 in your Apple 401k. And you decide that you want to take $50,000 of your Apple 401k and invest it in Apple stock. When you do so, your retirement plan now owns $50,000 worth of share of Apple. But what most people don't know is that the money that the funds that your retirement plan used to buy those shares, where did it go? Well, most people don't know, but it went in this scenario right in Apple's corporate checking account that you could use that Apple could use for any legitimate business expense. It's not a loan, it's not an early withdrawal. Your plan gets the shares and the company got the cash. Can ROBS only be done one time when you're going to business, or can it be done? Okay, so the question is, can ROBS only be done one time when you're going into the business, or can it be done multiple times to inject money in the business to expand? So absolutely great question, Yuri. So when it comes to the injection of funds, when you have started the rollover process, let me Yuri finish this small portion of this, and that's going to be the very next thing that I answer. So what Benetrends does is we create a company for your business. Let's call it ABC Business, doing business as Stand Strong Fencing franchise. After the corporation is created, then we create a customized retirement plan for that business. As the owners of the business, you're automatically an employee of the business. And just like in the Apple to Microsoft example, you're able to roll any qualified retirement plan funds into this new retirement plan for your business. And just like Apple investing your Apple retirement plan investing in Apple stock, now your retirement plan buys shares in your business. And through that stock transaction, that money goes right into your corporate checking account that you can use for any legitimate business expense, franchise fees, working capital, paying yourself a salary, you name it. So now we go back and discuss the question that Yuri asked, and then I'll get to Gustavo's question. Can ROBS only be done one time? So this is I'm positive that I understand your question. I'm going to answer it in two different ways just to make sure that it's clarifying. And feel free to take yourself off mute if this is not the question you're asking. So yes, you can continue to do ROBS multiple times. If we create the retirement plan for your company, you roll the funds into the retirement account by stock, that starts this business. And then let's say you want to build those funds back up in that retirement plan, and you decide that you're wanting to buy another business or open up another territory or a number of things. You're able to roll those funds that you've saved up or any funds that you've left in that retirement plan. Let's say you rolled 200,000 over, but you only used 50,000 of it. You're able to roll and start another company and another retirement plan. You can continue to roll into as many companies as the cash you have allows. That's one way to answer that question. Another way to answer that question, Yuri, is, and again, take yourself off mute if this is not the question you're asking. If you have, let's say, $200,000 in a retirement plan fund, and you only need $100,000, let's say, for your franchise fees. So you only roll over $100,000 and you start your business with this account, but later on down the road, you decide, I really wish I would have rolled the entire 200 over. If it's within 3 months or 90 days, you can roll that money in funds, no issue, no problem. If it's been longer than 90 days, the only thing that needs to be done is you need to have a valuation done on your company. Benetrends does not do that because it's a conflict of interest. However, we do have connections, several connections of people that do that. And it typically costs a little over $1,000, but you'd have to figure out how much that stock is worth because essentially, obviously the plan's going to be buying more stock in the company. So I guess that's two ways to answer that. Feel free to interrupt if that didn't answer your questions.
That helps. Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, great. So Gustavo, yes. Do you have to transfer the entire balance of your retirement account into the startup, or could it be a partial interest transfer? I think that answered the question, right? What I just said. So I always recommend that you, and yes, you can use an IRA as well. As long as it's a traditional IRA, absolutely, we can use those funds. Let's see here, Gustavo. So I hope that answered your question. I always recommend that you roll over the entire amount that you need to utilize, just because then, as I mentioned, you're going to have to pay that fee to have the valuation done. However, you don't have to. So if it's past 90 days, you're going to have to see how much that stock is worth for your company. If it's prior to 90 days, then there's no issue there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Let's see. My advisor said you can use IRA funds for 60 days only. Perhaps he's confused. Yeah, no, there's nothing to do with the time frame. The only thing I'm wondering about with that 60 days is maybe he's thinking, the amount to roll over without having to do the valuation. I'm not really sure, but yeah, you can use the IRA funds.
Yeah, he just said you could essentially move it out and move it back in. There'd be no penalty, but I don't think he understood the ROBS process.
Yeah, no, I hope that, did everything I just say kind of make sense there then?
Yes, he just acted as though it didn't exist. You couldn't borrow against your IRA.
Yeah, so it's not a loan or an early withdrawal. It is essentially just like leaving from one job to another. That is the same way that you do now. So he's probably talking about a participant loan, which I'm not sure if you're able to do a participant loan off of IRA. I don't think you can actually. So that's probably what he's thinking of. But you can off of your other retirement plan funds. But this is not a loan. Is there a deadline between the date you leave your job and the date when your funds need to be rolled over? Okay, great question, Yuri. So when it comes to the rollover, and I apologize if my dog's barking in the background. Don't tell my husband, but Amazon keeps showing up. So you may hear dog barking in the background. Anyway, Amazon's here all day, every day. I'm sure no one else has that problem right now. But anyway, so when it comes to the availability of your, let me just go back to this question. I got distracted there. Leaving your job. Okay, great question. So when it comes to leaving your job, every job has a different rule as to when you get your funds. Sometimes it's 30 days. Some corporations only release funds on the 15th of the month. So if you wanted it on the 16th, you have to wait till the 15th of next month. Sometimes it's 30 days, but you can ask your plan administrator what that would be. One nice thing about Benetrends is that we can get started with your everything that needs to be done besides that rollover portion, doing your corporation, your EIN number, plan design before that time frame. And then as soon as your funds are available, we can get that rollover process started. Any other questions about that? I will move to the next slide. Okay. So the steps that I kind of reviewed already. Step one is establishing a corporation with your new company retirement plan. And as the owner and participant in the plan, then you are able to roll those funds over. As your plan investment, it will buy stock in the corporation. And then of course, your new corporation now has the capital to use for any legitimate business expense. If you're planning to keep your job, then you are going to maybe not want to take as high of a payment as far as your salary. You're only required to go ahead and take, I believe it's like minimum wage. That's it, minimum wage. So if you don't want to take a lot of salary, you don't have to. Any other questions? Okay. Let me see what the question is. If you pay yourself salary, does that trigger double taxation? No. So you are required double taxation. And Yuri, you know what? I'd love to jump on a call with you to discuss that. The only time I've ever seen, and we've never had to go back on our word about saying you will never be double taxed. The only time that occurs is if you made way too much money just in general, but not with the salary. So you can. So one of the things, guys, I always wanted to let people know is you want to start thinking as a business owner. So we're all used to, maybe like how much our salary is to pay all of our bills. But when you become a business owner, you're going to have the business pay for a lot of the expenses that you now typically take as salary. Maybe your cell phone. Maybe you're going to have a home office. A lot of things at home that you're going to have to pay for. The vehicle expenses, gas, dinners that you may be discussing your business on with. You can pay yourself off of dividends. You can pay yourself bonus and take a lower salary if you want to. Oops. All right. You can, yes. So, Jonah, if your, if the plan, the retirement plan that you're wanting to utilize is with your current company, then that would be an issue. There's one way around that. And that is if you ask your plan administrator, so anybody that has retirement plans with their current company and they want to continue to keep their current job, you can find out from your plan administrator if your plan allows for what's called in-service rollover. If they allow for an in-service rollover, then we can do the Roth plan. If they do not, then those funds are not available unless you terminate your position. Okay, I've seen it happen. As a matter of fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I had someone that they called the plan administrator. They were allowed to do in-service rollover, and it works. There's nothing that your company can say or do to prevent you from doing that. The retirement plan, the way it was set up from the beginning, that's it either allowed for or it didn't allow for it when it comes to that process. In-service rollover, you got it. And you don't need to tell your company that you're buying a business or looking into any of that. But just your plan administrator. So that would be like Fidelity, Schwab, whoever the custodian of your plan is. And also, I forgot to mention that if, as far as custodians of your plan, you can continue to use whoever you want to. We are just the plan administrators. Okay. So benefits of the Rainmaker plan, tax deferred, penalty free. There's, using your pre-tax dollars. I mean, honestly, if you're able to, the more money we make, the more money the government takes, as we all know. And so if you're able to utilize funds that have not been touched by the government, you're essentially having, a silent investor, Uncle Sam, putting forth, all close to 40% of your total project cost when it comes to retirement plan dollars. Your the funding process for rollover takes about 21 business days from start to finish. So you're able to access those funds relatively quickly, and you can use those funds for your equity injection, for an SBA loan. Sometimes I have people, guys, that are have several $100,000 in their retirement plans, and they only want to use the amount for the equity injection into the SBA loan. And that's the only reason they want to do it, because it's pre-tax and they don't want to use their cash to do that. I have candidates that want to fund the entire project using their retirement plan fund. So, and that would be the case. As a matter of fact, just something that just came to mind right now is I've had candidates that are leaving a very high-paying job, and they, let's say they have $800,000 in retirement plan funds, and they want to roll over enough to secure an SBA loan, but also enough to pay themselves a salary for the entire first year of their business. Looking at the amount of cost of living that they have currently, and they're able to do that as well. So securing yourself a salary, and you can change your salary. Can you explain the corporation type since it won't be an LLC? Yes, absolutely. So I'll finish this and I'll go back to that. So for example, there's no rule about your salary. So if you want to pay yourself, $200,000 this year, and then next year you want to pay yourself minimum wage, you can do that. No one can tell you, and you don't have to go through a process. It's just like any other job. You get raises, you maybe get a demotion. I don't know. You make that decision as far as your salary goes. So the first year, if you need more cash for your salary just to get you through that startup phase, you can do that, and then go ahead and go back to a lower salary if you want. C Corp are the benefits C corporations. And I'm wondering if that's on my next slide, and if it's not, I will just get into it. Let me click here. This is just Roth and FBA loans, which we already talked about. So anyway, C corps are the only corporation that is not a pass-through entity. So LLCs, S corps, all the taxes are passed directly to you. With the C corp, the corporation takes a bulk of the taxes, which typically I think it's like 21% for the corporation tax. Your income tax and any salaries are tax deductible from the business, so that cuts down on that as well. So when it comes to a C corp, they're the easiest way to show a loss. Much easier than an LLC, much easier than an S corp. So there's a lot of benefits. You can also run a lot of things through a C corporation that will, as I mentioned earlier, cut down on your income and your income taxes. There is a second generation Roth program, but I don't want to bore you with the details because you have to be qualified to utilize this program with us. But if you are, looking to use a very small amount of your retirement funds, and you have a decent amount of cash that you can use for your SBA loan or any of the loan opportunities, if you are going to keep your job or have a good amount of income coming in, and with your family, let's say, and you're worried about your income taxes going up, the second generation Roth program is called the RAP, which is our Rainmaker Advantage Plan. I call it our Roth Advantage Plan, and it is a Roth retirement vehicle. The bones of it are the same, so you're rolling funds over. All that is the same as the Roth. The difference here is that it is a Roth retirement vehicle. Couple things to note about that. And if you guys are interested in this, it definitely calls for another decent, 40-minute conversation. So I won't get into the depths of it, the weeds of it, but If you're familiar with a gentleman named Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, this is how he funded PayPal. And I think he started it with $2,500. And since then, since the inception, has never paid a dime of income tax or capital gains tax because he created the retirement plan with his business as a Roth. So Roth retirement plans are forever exempt from income tax and capital gains tax. So in that scenario, any profits of the business that you would have put back into the plan would then be exempt from capital gains tax and income tax. And there's no minimum required distributions for the Rainmaker Advantage plan. Another thing to note about the rollover of the Robs programs, either RAP or Robs, is that there is the opportunities for the different types of plans. At Benetrends, we don't just do basic 401ks. We have defined benefit plans, we have profit sharing plans. The benefits of those are in different scenarios. Happy to chat with you about those. But for example, with a defined benefit plan, you and your spouse can put up to together $500,000 worth of profits back into the business. And in the RAP scenario, those profits would grow income tax free and capital gains tax free. In the RAP scenario, it's deferred. So happy to chat about any of those things if you guys are interested. Best practices here to get pre-approved. So as I mentioned before, we do a free pre-approval process. It's very simple. Filling out a assessment form and then making an appointment with Anthony from our finance team. Once you have that appointment, he'll have you upload some documents that he needs from you, credit scores from 3 reporting agencies. You'll have your call and you would have a pre-approval within 5 business days. One thing I forgot to mention too about the SBA is typically between 45 days and 10 weeks, just depending on how quickly everything gets back. And on top of it, the fleet program takes about from 4 to 6 weeks. And as I mentioned, the rollover program takes between, right now it's 25 business days, but it's a very busy time of year. People are wanting to do this before the end of the year for tax purposes. But typically it takes 21 business days. Thank you for your time today. If you want to take a screenshot, or not screenshot, if you want to take a picture of my QR code, you're welcome to do so. My information is there, screenshot it. I'm sure Kennedy will send all my information out as well. Any other questions that anybody has, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Genesis, I have just 2 questions.
Sure.
On the fleet program, you said 6 to 9% typically. And did you say it's not a secured loan?
It is not an SBA loan. So it's not unsecured. It's not an unsecured loan. No, it is specifically from a bank doing the vehicle and equipment package.
So that's the security is the vehicle, but you're not making a promise beyond that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then on the SBA loan, I know you said 20%, but it seemed like you were saying that was the max. Do I understand that correctly? If somebody had cash, why wouldn't they put more into?
Correct. Well, go ahead.
So are you saying they couldn't infuse more than 20% into the business?
No, that is just the maximum requirement from the SBA. So I have people that want to put 50% down. Absolutely. That is not a problem. It's just that is what the SBA is going to require, a maximum of 20%.
Got it. Okay.
Sure. I'm just seeing a question here. I'm curious to why you wouldn't do Roths if you have the funds. Exactly. I agree with you 100%. I am me personally, I'm not a credit card person, so I'm a cash payer for everything. So if I can pay and have as little debt as possible in starting a business, as much as even with the pre-tax opportunity, I agree. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't want to do that. Not only because you're using pre-tax dollars, but also because it is a real working retirement plan. And I'm a business owner. My husband and I own 3 businesses, and as business owners, you don't have the opportunity typically to have a retirement plan. So not only can you use your funds to fund your business, but now you also have the opportunity to continue to grow that retirement plan. However, there's no requirement to do so.
I had a question. I know we talked about C Corp and compared to the S Corp, LLC. I was listening to another, tax strategy call, and the gentleman really wasn't that familiar with Rob's, but it seemed like he was kind of positioning like C Corp there's a lot more rules and parameters around that, very, very formalized compared to S Corp or LLC. Listening to you, it almost seems like there's nothing wrong with C Corp. This is the way to go. What are some of the downsides, if you will?
Well, I mean, the downside that most people say is that double taxation, which we talked to, like I spoke to earlier. I mean, if you take a salary, you're going to pay income tax. So anything that shows as a profit after write-off, deductions, things like that, you will pay corporate tax, which is 21%, which is less typically than most of your income taxes would be. And it's easy to show that C Corp didn't show any profits. You got a lot of tax deductions there. It honestly is more tax advantage to me. I will tell you this: if your CPA or the CPA maybe that was on the call with you does not work with C Corps, then they typically don't want to. So I always like to use the example of if you are a company that makes tennis shoes. And somebody says, well, why don't you make sandals? And then you say, well, if I'm going to make sandals, I'm going to have to hire more people. I'm going to have to get new equipment and machinery, even though they're both shoes. That's the way I like people to look at, C Corps, CPAs when it comes to C Corps and LLCs and S Corps. When you are a CPA that only typically works with S Corps and LLCs, it's easy for you to do because most of this work is done by your bookkeeper. If you start working with C Corps, that's all the work is going to be on the account. So if you should choose to move through this process, we would, if you don't have an accountant that works with C Corps, we have tons of referrals of accountants that work specifically, that understand the RODS program and work with C Corps. Does that answer your question, Dan?
Yeah, for the most part, I think there's probably a lot more questions. I have more of a tax professional probably that help,
Dan, actually, as a matter of fact, one of our senior vice presidents he was an accountant and a CPA, and is our certified tax expert. And I'm happy to, if you're interested, jump on a call with him so that if you want to review. Even we have him speak to CPAs to explain the different programs. So happy to do that if that's something that you might be interested in.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Because I think the reality is, if I were to go forward with the business investment, I would be going through the Rob's rollover. But if I had a choice, I probably wouldn't choose C Corp, right? I'd be choosing LLC or S Corp. So I just want to, I'm kind of, drinking out of a fire hose here. So
yeah, absolutely understandable. I'm happy to do that. I will make sure that you have my contact information, and we'll set up a time to discuss with Larry, our resident tax expert, to go through all of that for sure.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Let's see here. Would you have an LLC out of a C Corp that so something goes wrong, the LLC is liable and you lose? So that people do ask that question. However, we typically do not recommend that because the C Corporation at the end of the day is almost like it is a trust essentially that always has to have full ownership. But Yuri, also with you to kind of dig into that a little bit more, I'm happy to also jump on a call with you to discuss that, or have Larry jump on too, since he is a certified tax expert and I'm not. I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't want to be too dangerous when it comes to taxes. No problem. Any other questions?
Hi, Jan. This is Wendy Purvis. Can you talk a little bit about the fees associated with setting up a C Corp and the ROBs?
Sure, absolutely. And let me just see if I can pull up something on my screen to show you guys. I might be able to do that. When it comes to our fees for the, let me just do this real quick so that you can see it at the same time. Hold on 1 second. All right, I think it's gonna pop up, and then if it does, yes. All right, let me do this, and I will share my screen in 1 second.
Will you also put your QR code back up?
Absolutely, I'll do this, and then I'll put my QR code back up in 1 quick second. All right, let's see, share. All right, here we go. Whoops. Let me widen this up a little bit. Okay, so here we go. So when it comes to, let me move my face out of the way. Okay, so when it comes to the established or the actual initial fee. So in the initial fee, we do the incorporation services, your EIN number, articles of incorporation. I mean, I don't have to read through every single thing here, but you can see all that we do. The bylaws, plan adoption, agreement setup, initial stock valuation, and the consulting with the design and compliance requirements, all of that. That's a one-time fee that we do have. The other fee is associated with a retirement plan. So it's an annual fee that we've broken up into 12 monthly payments, $155 a month that your corporation pays. This is a requirement of the IRS that you have a plan administrator. This is the example of the things that we do. And this is something that I can also share via email if anybody wants it. The preparation of your forms, we do compliance testing, determine eligibility in investing. If you're ever audited, we handle that as well. Providing your obviously employer required employee notifications, the annual fair market value, any required plan amendments, and of course you have a dedicated plan analyst. So they will always be there for you. Any questions that you have, we have on staff and a risk attorney, whatever that has to do with, and I'm just gonna share my screen again so you can see my QR code. Anything that has to do with retirement plans, we have on staff at Benetrends. So it is coming to you right now. There you go. So that is all included in that administrating. I will tell you as well, there's no long-term commitment to use us as plan administrators. However, most of our customers are with us, even 10 years later. As I mentioned earlier, the custodian of your plan, you guys can use, whoever it is that you would like to do that. Thanks, Mason. I appreciate it. Any other questions? I know that we're running here at the end of time. Happy to address anything, or please feel free to reach out to me. I really enjoyed talking with you guys today. Great. Well, if there's no other questions, I know Kennedy's on here to finish out.
Yeah. So I'll make sure Jen's contact information